So very good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to everybody, and welcome along to yet another of our Business Spotlight interviews. My name's Ron Maycock. I'm the owner of Action Coach Castleford and Business Performance UK, and I'm delighted this afternoon to be joined by Simon Zimmerman. Simon, very good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Hi, how are we doing?
Yeah,
So
really good.
Simon is the founder and director of Solomon, and we're going to be hearing more from Simon about Solomon in just a few moments' time. Before we do that, though, I really wanted to explain what the purpose of these interviews actually is. So we're surrounded by some amazing businesses in our region, and each of them have got their own stories to tell, and this gives us an opportunity really to share their journeys, showcase their achievements, and ultimately maximize their exposure, all in the name of abundance. And it's for the benefit of businesses across the UK, not just in the Yorkshire region. So without further ado, Simon, tell me a little bit more about Solomon.
Hi, thanks very much for having me. So Solomon is a software company, but we are a big fish in a very small pond. We create software for place managers and makers, so the people that manage our towns and cities across the UK. And we've been doing this now for about 10 years.
Fantastic. So on a day-to-day basis, what's your involvement? What's the structure of the company and what do you do?
Yeah, so we're very small. We're a micro business. There's just four of us, and my job is to kind of keep the business ticking over day to day and making sure the team have got everything that they need, but also quite heavily involved in the technical aspects of the business. So I would say probably 50% of my day is writing code, and 50% of my day is kind of managing process.
Okay, excellent. And sounds a very interesting market that you're in. So, do you want to go into a little bit more information about who the end client is and how are they constructed,
Yeah.
and where you fit into that supply chain, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of our customers are these organizations called business improvement districts, which is something I'd never heard of before until I met one. And that was an organization called Leeds Bid in Leeds, where I'm based. And Leeds Bid is it's a business club essentially. About 20 years ago, a piece of legislation was passed that allowed businesses to come together and use a levy on business rates to collect money from other local businesses to fund things that improve the area. So in Leeds, every business that has a rateable value of 60,000 or over is included in the bid, and every year they get an additional bill on top of their business rates bill for the levy, and that all goes into a pot. It's about £2.5 million in Leeds, and that gets spent on doing things like more jet washing, waste recovery schemes, security, having a nice welcome for the city, managing large events, that kind of thing. So they're really responsible for keeping Leeds clean, green, safe, and thriving. And so they approached us off the back of some work we've been doing, making local dashboards, and said, is it possible to create something where our businesses can kind of log into a system and see all the great things that we do for them? Because one of the problems I think lots of bids have is that their work can often be invisible. So they're out jet washing early in the morning, or they're dealing with an issue that's happened through the night, and the businesses don't see it. And so they'll go in and say, oh, how are you finding the work that we're doing? And well, I've got no idea what the bid does for me. So they needed a system that collected an evidence base of all the stuff that they do so they could share it with them. And that's effectively what we've been doing. We started in Leeds. We now work with more than 80 business improvement districts across the UK, and they range from big cities like Leeds, Newcastle, Liverpool, but right down to small towns like Huddersfield and Shrewsbury, and then even smaller places, kind of market towns like Ripon as well are using systems like this to manage their areas. So.
So within the client base, so the services that are actually provided under Leeds Bid or whatever, that's actually done through the Leeds Bid. That's not done through the businesses as such, or are they responsible for, as well as collecting the levy, allocating where it goes and assigning that to different contractors?
Yeah, so Leeds Bid writes a business plan
Yeah.
for a 5-year term, and in that they'll set out all of the things that they're going to do, and it's all kind of budgeted down to the penny. And then the businesses are putting money in on the basis of that business plan,
Yeah.
and they just get on with delivery. And then at the end of 5 years, there's a renewal ballot where all the businesses get to decide if this thing continues or not. which is again why a system like ours is really important, because without it, the bid doesn't have a way of saying for each individual business, here's all the things that we did for you. We came down and removed graffiti, we
Mhm.
included you in this promotional material, that kind of thing.
And did it start out as some almost supplement to things like the ERDF, where there's a pot of European money for regeneration, um, but where maybe it wasn't then going into the main conurbations and into the main cities, so the businesses weren't seeing the benefit. So
Yes,
it sort of come from
it,
that, I guess?
it came from it was stolen from a Canadian a model of doing things.
Mhm,
North America are full of business improvement districts, and in fact, a lot of them don't have the 5-year term. They just kind of operate, and they're much bigger than they are here in the UK. So they're managing assets, and I think the biggest I know of is Philadelphia. Their annual budget's $24 million a year,
mhm,
and so, but they're effectively it was businesses saying, let's tax ourselves to do things that local government has stopped doing. So increasing the amount of street cleaning that was happening, putting security people on the streets, investing in security radios, that kind of thing. So that a delegation from the UK had gone out to kind of look at what was happening in America. And say this was 20 years ago, came back, and fairly quickly this piece of legislation was passed, and the first one was set up in Kingston upon Thames, which is one of our customers, Kingston First.
mhm. Excellent. Well, it's as you say, it's quite a defined and quite a unique offering. So, what opportunities does that, or let me rephrase that? Do you have capacity at the moment to take on opportunities outside of your current customer base?
Well, no, not really. We're dedicated to the market that we're in, and that is an opportunity and a challenge sometimes, because we're, as I say, the market leader in a small market. But we've grown with our customers, and the product is deeply tailored to the way that they work, and so it has a set of tools that help them to manage that reballot process that I talked about,
Hmm.
and it's got specific information that would relate to that wouldn't be useful to any other industry, and so we're kind of we're tightly coupled with our customers, but at the same time, that's great because we have great customer loyalty, and we know our market very well, and we can evolve in dialogue with those customers in a way that's very difficult to do, I think, if you're dealing with people that have got lots of disparate concerns.
Hmm. So, what's the biggest threat, I guess? As you say, you are the market leader, um, but that would also indicate that there are other people in your market for you to
Yeah.
lead. So, is that the main threat? Is it
Yeah,
lack
so
of the model sustaining and moving forward, or?
I think the biggest threats for us are things like uh, business rates revaluation. So we've just had a major evaluation. They happen every 5 years, where the valuations office agency, who are responsible for setting the rateable value for any business property, they've looked at all the properties in the UK and reclassified them. And the outcome is that retail properties will be paying a significantly smaller amount for their business rates, and a lot of our bid customers, they depend on retail business rates for their income, and
Yeah.
so a lot of our customers are finding themselves out of pocket, um, and also I think although these are private businesses and there's a piece of legislation that's wrapped around them, legislation changes, and so it's hard for us to know with a very long term view what's going to happen to bids. Our sense is, from the events that we go to, the kind of conferences, that they're getting more and more important to the future sustainability of our towns and cities, precisely because they're stepping in to do things that local government can't afford to do anymore, or local government is finding easy to cut because there aren't that many people casting votes in local elections in city centres.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they're the big threats. I guess another threat, although I think of it more as a challenge, really, is about the scale. There's a limit to how big we can get in such a small market. Um, we've looked at the possibility of taking our system over to North America, because, as I say, it's a much bigger market there, but that brings its own challenges in terms of a small team being able to support across different time zones, and I think there's litigiousness in the states that we don't have here. And so
Yeah,
this, yeah, I think everybody I've spoken to about going to America said the first thing you should do is lawyer up, because
yeah.
litigation is just a form of negotiation in America. So I don't know how much of a generalization that is, but I'm tempted not to find out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There is that temptation. And are you being affected by the transition into the mayoral system? So obviously, West Yorkshire Combined Authority now is doing a lot of stuff that historically the LEP and other sort of other institutions and organisations were sort of set about. They seem to be bringing a lot of this together and then looking at a multitude of providers to make sure that the services are available, things are done, whether it's coming from council or central central pots of money.
Yeah.
There seems to be this bit of impetus at the moment with organisations like that. So I just wonder, is that maybe where it's going to drag you, that
Yeah,
this becomes integrated with the local authority?
so I'm not sure how much it will affect us directly, but indirectly, there's things like the enterprise zones, and there's obviously, yeah, in some places there's the situation with metropolitan mayors and what have you. But everywhere we're looking, bids are at the table and are seen as a
Mhm.
really important partner in that process, because they represent the bigger businesses in all the areas where they exist. So, if you look across our database, there's about, well, more than 100,000 businesses represented across all of our customers.
Mhm.
So they're a huge and very powerful voice in terms of expressing what businesses want, but also being able to galvanize businesses behind particular initiatives.
Yeah, yeah.
So I see it as I see all those things as positive, and bids as a very important partner in them.
So I'm just trying to think if it's likely that the actual so the software that you're doing at the moment, that's primarily in the operation once the bid's been accepted, or is it actually part of a fundamental part of the bid as well, front end?
Yeah, so we have a tool, we call it the scenario planner. It's not a very sexy name, but it allows any organization to get data from the valuations office agency and put it on a map, and then draw boundaries around it. And it will tell you how many um, non-domestic properties exist within that boundary that you've drawn, and what they add up to in terms of rateable value. So it's a tool that bids can use in the feasibility stage before when they're writing their business plan, so before they exist as a limited company, which it has always been interesting to me. So these things, they kind of feel like they're public sector things, but they're not. They're set up as limited companies, and it's kind of a privately backed thing. So while they're in that process of writing the business plan and getting support, they can use our system to draw those boundaries and work out who would be included. And then it's very easy to transition from that into well, now we've started the bid and we know what all the properties are and who pays the business rates there. What's the name above the shop door? Who's the store manager or the receptionist or the person that we're going to be dealing with day to day? What sector do they belong to? What initiatives are they part of? And so they can tag and segment the data in lots of different ways within the system.
Are they
So
are they in any way shaping the future industries of an area? I remember the Northeast and Sheffield actually as well were one of the first areas to turn around and say we're going to be a hub of digital expertise and we're going to be 5G before anyone else and turning it into this sort of center for innovation based on connectivity and they've sort of pretty much set their stall and said that's why we would like to be. Those are the kind of businesses that we want to attract for the future, and this is what we're going to need to do to actually do it.
yeah, it's interesting. So I think it depends where in the country you are. So Leeds Bid is, I mean, it's incredible. It does so many things, but it is quite restrained in terms of what it knows what it's there to do, and it's there
Mm.
to look after high street and professional services owners
Right.
in the city,
Yeah.
and to make sure that they're getting what they need, which is more people in town, more things for their employees to do, safer streets, greener spaces, all of those sorts of things. And they defer all of those other things to organisations like the LEP, but they get heavily involved in so they're part of the policy making, but they're not the mechanism for delivery
Hmm.
for those things. That said, you go to another area like Norwich, for example, and Norwich Bid is also the destination marketing organisation and the inward investment organisation. And same for Plymouth, where the Bid and Destination Plymouth are sort of one and the same. So I think it really depends on how and why the bid was set up in the first place and who was involved in it. So in Leeds, it was the big property owners like Land Securities and Town Centre Securities
Hmm.
that got together and said, right, let's make this thing happen, because doing this is going to improve the area and that has a benefit for us as landowners. Whereas in Harrogate, it was much more practical. In Harrogate, the issue was 3 or 4 businesses were effectively paying for the Christmas lights every year, and everyone else was getting the benefit of that. And a bid started off as a mechanism to make sure that that expense was shared across the many. It's subsequently become much more than that, and they've got their own street cleaner and they've got their own initiatives to help bring people into the area. Um, yeah, so I think it depends on the genesis of the bid as to where it ends up in terms of
Yeah.
what it's doing. But I do think longer term they are getting more important. And as I say, in America, that then they're not just about sort of running events and getting people into town. They're about how do we make sure that we've got good health outcomes, that we've got affordable housing, that we've got a good transport network. So I imagine that UK bids will end up taking more of those things on over time in terms of policy.
It's really interesting. I don't know if you've ever done anything with Bishy Road in
No,
York.
no.
So their entire concept is I don't think they've got a single chain-based retailer on their high street on Bishy
Right,
Road,
okay.
on Bishopthorpe Road. And basically they've created this independent retailers. They did a thing for turning on the Christmas lights where every business sponsored a light bulb,
All
and they
right,
had
nice.
X amount of lights that were turned on. They had more people come to visit the turning on of their lights than they did for the centre of York.
Right, wow, wow, brilliant. That's
It's
fantastic.
a great demonstration of when a local community gets together and how they can really drive the business and actually attract businesses that they want,
Yeah,
rather than, I think the nearest they had to a chain, I think they've got a chain pub. But they wouldn't allow any of the normal retail high street names that you see everywhere else, which is a
yeah,
great concept. And they're looking after that sort of that create their own culture and their own environment based on what they're doing. So
that's
might be a
fantastic.
call to
I'll dig that up. Yeah, absolutely.
so excellent. So what's next? Obviously, as you say, that you at the moment defined a little bit by the market. There are more opportunities. This is becoming more and more popular that people are taking control of their local environment to make it a better place to do business. So what's the plan? Where would you like to see the business go in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so we actually got to a bit of a crossroads towards the end of last year where we were asking ourselves exactly this question, because we have got a great business and we're in this market where we love our customers and they love us, but we want more. And so we started off thinking, well, we've got all of this technical capability, we've learned so much over the last few years. How could we apply that to maybe making the product more generic and move into other areas?
Mhm.
But then it becomes, I mean, our customers call us a CRM. I've never thought of us as a CRM, because I've always thought of a CRM as being about a sales organization having a tool, and none of our customers are selling anything. They're capturing value, but it does have a lot of the same features. So we talked about whether we could do something like that. But ultimately, you then get into competition with the sales forces and the capsule CRMs of this world who are doing amazing things, and I don't think we can compete. So I've talked about America, and I've been over. We do actually have one customer not the big Philadelphia one I talked about. Philadelphia's got about half a dozen business improvement districts, and so we're working with one of the smaller ones, and that's been really interesting. And I think there's definitely scope for us to do more in the States, but it would have to be on one side of the coast at first, to make it manageable in terms of support.
Mm,
Um, but so the big thing we've ended up thinking about is mergers and acquisitions, because we're yes, we're in a small market, but actually there are lots of like-minded vendors who are offering complementary services, and we've
mm,
all got the same challenge, that there's a bit of a glass ceiling in terms of our ability to scale. But if we put things together and we look at kind of cross-selling and developing new services together, that's the thing that's most interesting at the minute. So we're having some really good conversations about that, and it'll be really interesting to see where we end up in well, I think we'll be in a very different place next year anyway.
yeah, no, definitely. And it sounds an exciting time. And whether you go down that sort of JV kind of route, or if you do go down the acquisition, where you can find complementary services that you can't easily do yourself, that's a recipe for justifying, acquiring a business, or at least merging the skills together so that you can deliver a wider market.
Yeah.
It just de-risks your model, as you were sort of saying. If it's so defined and you are limited by the size of the market,
Yeah,
where else do you
well,
go with it?
we're kind of limited in two ways. A thing I didn't say before. So we are part of a Bid's operational budget. So we're a kind of tool for managing the day-to-day operations of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
business, which is capped. So they can only spend so much on people and
Hmm.
operating the bid, because businesses want most of that money to be spent, as it should be, on
Yeah, yeah, on
improving the
services.
area.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so actually finding a partner who is in the marketing budget or the business engagement budget, or, it opens other opportunities for us.
Mm, no, very, very interesting of which way it'll go, and it'll be a case of watch this space and see see,
Yeah,
as you said,
absolutely.
very different place in a year's time, which
Yeah,
is really
I'll come
exciting.
back in a
So
year and tell you.
yeah, no, absolutely, and it's an ongoing thing, and it's always great to get that continuity and actually find out what's manifested, how it's panned out, and are you still smiling?
Always.
Excellent. Well, it's bringing us towards the end of the interview. It sort of remains just to pose a quick question. Are there any areas that we've not covered, Simon, that you would really like to get across, or have we put the worlds to right for a
No, no.
first instalment?
Yeah, no. I think that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, really pleased that you've joined us this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been eye-opening as well. You've explained about a market that, quite frankly, myself and probably most of the people in business in this neck of the woods probably didn't know existed. You certainly enlightened us with that. So thanks again to Simon for joining us. Also, thank you for everyone for watching. If you're wanting to record your own spotlight interview, if you want to showcase your business and get your message out there, simply get in touch. We'll put all the contact details when we publish these videos, and you'll be able to get that booked in. So once again, very big thank you to Simon. Have a great afternoon. Really looking forward to hearing what happens in the next year, and thank you for joining us.